So welcome. My name is Domenico Dinoia. I'm a journalist. I'm the editor of cineropa.org. And I'm here to welcome great intervenants today, people that are a voice, an important voice in Arthouse, in the Arthouse cinema industry in Europe. And we have quite a broad topic today to discuss. It's the elephant in the room. I mean, that I hope is not there. I'm not wearing a mask while talking to you, but you are all asked to keep your mask on during this presentation. I will start by just a few recommendations, the basic ones. Turn off your phone, wear your mask, that's it. And then also, and this also works for our participants. When I'm saying participants, you are also participants of this panel. So just don't intervene during the conversation. There will be time in the end for your questions. This is also a sanitary measure so that we can disinfect the microphones and pass the microphones around. It's just logistics. Not that we want to censor anyone here. Speaking of which, we have enough key players of this industry here in this room, on stage and in the attendance, to have a great constructive conversation. This means that we don't need to point fingers at participants that are not here, certain streaming platforms, for example, because in a debate, it's useless to just have one voice and have one side of the story. So if they are not here, they are not part of the conversation, and we have enough elements anyway to be progressive with the people that are attending. So without further ado, I will just start by introducing each of the people here on stage. So we are welcoming Sabine Verheyen. Sabine Verheyen is the chairwoman of the Committee on Culture and Education at the European Parliament. Welcome. Then here in the front, we have Dr. Christian Bral. He's president of the CICAE and of the AG Kino Gilde, the German Association Arthouse of Arthouse Cinema, and CEO of York Kinogruppe. Then sitting there at the end of the table, we have Mathieu Fournet. Mathieu Fournet is Director of European and International Affairs of the CNC, le Centre National du Cinéma et de l'Image Animée in France. Welcome. And then next to Mathieu, we have Vanja Kaludjercic. Did I make it? Thank you. Director of the International Film Festival Rotterdam, IFFR. Here in the front, Domenico Dinoia, President of the Italian Arthouse Cinema Association FICE, Federazione Italiana Cinema d'Essai. Then right behind him, almost right behind him, we have Marynia Gierat. Marynia is the director of Kinopod Baranami in Krakow, Poland. Here, at the other end of the table, we have Tinne Bral, associate manager of the distribution company Imagine from Benelux. And I think I didn't forget anyone. So we can start. So let's kick this session in with the main topic, the post-pandemic. I mean, we are not after the pandemic yet, sadly, but the impact of the coronavirus and the impact that it had on our industry, and especially on the art house sector. And by sector, I mean exhibition. So the place where you are watching films, the place where you fell in love with films, the screening rooms, cinemas. Venice Film Festival opened with a joint statement by several festival directors that were here on the invitation of Alberto Barbera to remind us of the importance of having festivals, having physical appointments with this art form that we love. And this is also the case for exhibitors. But on the contrary of festivals, you didn't have the opportunity to go online. During the pandemic, there was no B plan. No plan B, and the impact, therefore, has been more frontal. Nevertheless, life goes on, industry goes on, and today we have to get back to business as usual. But is it really as usual, or is it more? So the whole point of our discussion here will be what more do we have, where do we have to invest, where do we have to change things? Are we talking about innovation? Are we talking about, now that we have been warned that something like that can happen, can we protect ourselves from what is coming next? Because there will always be something next, and we don't know what it is. So about that question, if there's someone that has like a point to enter the debate, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, I will have specific questions for each one of you. Nobody dare to answer that. Well, it doesn't mean that nobody has the solution. A lot of people are working on solutions right now. And I will start with Sabine Verheyen. At the European Parliament level, can you tell us what are the dispositions, what are the discussions, I guess especially about the budget, on how to support the cinemas and the Arthouse industry during these times of pandemic?
First, we have to say that there were some schemes also in the member states beforehand during the crisis to try to help the sector, but it didn't reach everywhere the sector like it should, because the conditions under which you could take part in and get something out of these support funds was not always fitting to the diversity you have in the different parts of the culture and creative sector. What we are discussing now at the moment in the European Parliament is first a big next generation recovery fund, they call it. It's a 750 billion package of money that should support the different parts of society and industry that are tackled by the crisis, especially economical value that has been lost. And what we are fighting for as CULT committee is that we get a minimum, a share of 1% of this money earmarked for the cultural and creative sector. That would be 7.5 billion in the end. That's more than what we ever had in our programs from the European level. But if you think about that, the sectors, the whole cultural and creative sector stands for 4.2% of the GDP of the European Union. We are really not asking for too much when we say at a minimum 1%. And that is why we hope that we get this earmarking, because there is also an opportunity out of these 14 core aims for the supports out of this scheme. There also culture and creative sector is included when it comes, for example, to cultural tourism and other things. But explicitly for the media part, we need a special kind of support, and that is why we want an earmarked budget out of this structural fund. The second point is the next MFF, the Creative Europe program, where about 60% out of that program is for media. And at the moment, we are really discussing in the negotiations with the member states about a higher budget. The European Parliament asked for a doubling of the budget so that we would have 2.8 billion for 7 years. But the problem is that the member states reduced, the Commission reduced in its in May 2020 proposal the budget, and the member states brought it back to the original proposal of 1.64 billion euros. But that's hardly more than we had in the last 7 years, and I think that's not enough to help the sector coming out of the crisis. And if you see that this sector, especially also the media, the cinemas, the film industry, is one of that industries that is tackled most by the crisis, because the lockdowns are still there. You are not able to go back to a normal with the number of visitors you normally have in your cinemas. Also the productions are postponed, so you don't have so many movies that can be shown and screened. And I think that is a big loss, not just for as economical factor, but also as a factor for diversity in Europe. And what I think it's important that in this situation we either get more money out of the structure of the recovery funds, or we need a much higher budget than we had in the past for the Creative Europe program. And that is what the Culture Committee is fighting. And the Parliament in total has a big package of requests where the member states have to put something in addition into the budgets. It's on the education part, it's Erasmus Plus, it's Horizon, and it's the cultural and creative sectors. And if you take a look, that are all sectors that are relevant for future, because we need creativity not just for the creative sector, we also need it for other sectors of industries. Creativity is one of that points in culture where we are strong in Europe, where we have the richest diversity, and that the diversity we have in Europe is our richness. It's a challenge on the one hand, yes, but also the richness we have in Europe, and that is something we have to bring also to the outside, and that needs support. And we hope that we get the awareness to the heart of European politics in the next 7 years.
Thank you. And I said it this morning, and I say it again because we don't have the same audience, but thank you also for all the efforts that you are, the battle that you are leading at the Parliament for the budget. I mean, it's great energy, and everybody here is, I guess, very, very thankful you could, for the same price, have someone on that position that is not so committed. So thank you very much. Yeah, you can applaud. Mathieu, Fournet, France is known to have quite a good national market that is thriving most years. But your point of view is a little bit different because you are working with international affairs. How would you say that your daily work was impacted by this COVID situation, and what are your main challenges today? And by you, I mean CNC.
I'm sorry, I'm going to speak in French now. Donc je vais m'exprimer en français pour vous répondre, puisque cette fois-ci le panel est avec traduction simultanée. Puisque vous le savez, nous sommes très attachés à la diversité culturelle et à la diversité linguistique. Concernant le CNC, nous avons mis en place de nombreuses mesures, des mesures d'exception et des mesures d'urgence depuis le mois de mars, qui venaient en complément des mesures qui avaient été prises par le gouvernement français, donc des mesures État qui ont permis d'accompagner les entreprises, de garantir des prêts, de mettre en place le chômage partiel pour la majorité des entreprises du secteur culturel. Et le Centre national du cinéma a de son côté, lui, mis en place différentes mesures pour accompagner le secteur. Et j'y reviendrai, en particulier les salles, l'exploitation et les salles arts et essais. Mais de manière générale, nous avons repoussé les échéances en matière de taxes et de charges sociales pour toutes les entreprises et pour les exploitants. Nous avons dématérialisé toutes nos commissions pour pouvoir permettre à tous nos fonds de se tenir et de se maintenir. Madame la députée parlait de l'importance de la créativité et du problème des productions. Le CNC a été en mesure de continuer et de poursuivre le versement de toutes ces aides à la production et à la création pendant toute la durée du confinement depuis le mois de mars. Plus spécifiquement, pour pouvoir permettre la reprise des tournages, nous avons été le premier pays à mettre en place, ou l'un des premiers pays à mettre en place un fonds de garantie et d'indemnisation à partir du 1er juin pour pouvoir permettre la reprise des tournages en France avec une assurance Covid en cas d'accident Covid sur un tournage. Ce fonds d'indemnisation et de garantie a été mis en place avec un fonds d'État de 50 millions qui a permis donc la reprise des tournages. Certains pays avec lesquels la France a des traditions de coproduction comme la Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles, donc la Belgique, ou le Québec au Canada, ont également mis en place des fonds similaires. Mais il est vrai qu'il nous manque encore certainement un échelon européen pour permettre au tournage de reprendre dans des conditions satisfaisantes en matière d'assurance. Plus spécifiquement pour ce qui concerne les salles arts et essais et l'exploitation, le CNC a bien évidemment accompagné ce tissu de salles. Et vous le rappeliez, le marché français est, il est vrai, un marché très important avec plus de 200 millions d'entrées auxquelles nous tenons absolument. Notamment la TSA, c'est-à-dire la taxe spéciale affectée sur les entrées de cinéma, a été supprimée pour les mois de mars et d'avril pour permettre aux salles d'avoir des finances. Un plan d'aide et d'urgence va être mis en place là à la rentrée, et nous avons également, à partir de la réouverture des salles le 22 juin en France, mis en place un système d'aide, sans vouloir rentrer dans le détail. Des bonus pour les distributeurs et les producteurs ont été mis en place pour les encourager à sortir leurs films pendant l'été à partir de la réouverture des salles. L'idée était aussi de permettre aux salles, et notamment aux salles à réessai, d'avoir une certaine diversité sur les écrans et d'avoir une offre à proposer au public. Ça nous paraissait essentiel de pouvoir garantir une diversité sur les écrans et une offre aussi riche que possible pour pouvoir relancer la machine et pouvoir faire en sorte que les spectateurs aient envie de retourner en salle. Voilà. Et puis nous avons bien sûr accompagné le secteur avec la mise en place des guides sanitaires, des guides de recommandation, etc. À l'étranger, pour les salles à réessai en dehors de France, alors il n'y a pas d'aide spécifique, mais par contre avec Unifrance, qui est l'association professionnelle en charge de la promotion du cinéma français à l'étranger, nous avons un fonds d'aide aux distributeurs étrangers de films français, et nous en avons revu les dispositifs et les critères afin d'être aussi flexibles que possible et permettre notamment à des distributeurs étrangers de décaler des sorties de films ou de rendre des dossiers beaucoup plus tardivement, afin là aussi de permettre à des films français d'être dans les salles à l'étranger au moment de la réouverture. La situation est évidemment extrêmement compliquée, des salles réouvrent, des salles referment. C'est une situation que nous suivons avec beaucoup d'attention, et notamment donc avec Unifrance, qui est donc l'association pour la promotion du cinéma français à l'étranger.
So we had a vision coming from more the policymakers and the people that are finding solution on the political level, and then you have the people that are running cinemas, you have people that are distributing films, and Tinne, you are involved with distribution on 3 different countries, so Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Would you say first that the 3 countries have been touched the same way? It's the same kind of impact for the 3 of them, but what does it mean at the distribution level? I mean, how do you adapt their strategies, especially considering the fact that there are less films, that there are films that you had already bought and that you had to wait before distributing? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, indeed. I think all countries were impacted the same way, but there was a difference. Holland opened on the 1st of June, but there was a very strict and limited number of people who could attend movies. Belgium reopened cinemas on the 1st of July, and in Luxembourg it was, I think, the 18th of June. So we had to deal with several countries. Luxembourg is the smallest part, and it's a very, normally it's really the city that works a lot, the city of Luxembourg. But though we could see that our films were not performing as we used to see them perform, I think that people were anxious to get back to the theaters, but our main concern, because it's like 100,000 people, so it's like not our main country. But in Holland, I must say that I have the idea that the market is doing much better than in Belgium. Anyway, I'm an Arthouse distributor, so we have this problem in Belgium that we have much less Arthouse screens. But anyway, on all kind of films, we see that now Holland, they are like 17 million inhabitants, Belgium like 11 million, but films do like 3 to 4 times better in Holland than in Belgium. And I think it's due to the number of screens. We really don't have a lot of screens in Belgium. We have like 500, of which a small number of Arthouse. And anyway, we made some figures for a dossier that we submitted for funding, for help during these difficult times. And we could see that between 2017 and 2019, the share of the Arthouse, the independent Arthouse distribution, went from 12%, which is not enormous, to 6.9 last year. So the decline of Arthouse is really heavy. And also we see it now during these 2 months of the summer that, as a matter of fact, the Arthouse films did not that well. It were the crossovers and the broader films that got attention, and also we saw that a lot of theaters programmed old films. They went back to the Harry Potter films, 1917, a lot of older films, and they did better than the new releases, which is like quite worrying. We try, as Imagine, we postponed all our films and decided not to put them on platforms, because what we've seen in the very beginning of the confinement was that all the independent distributors came together, and we smashed the windows, as a matter of fact. And we could convince that to go on platforms, etc. But Imagine decided that the upcoming films we had were all films that would have performed well. We had really great titles. So we kept them for the theaters, because our core business is theatrical releases. So we were thinking that theaters would love to have fresh films that haven't seen anywhere. So on our French comedy, I must say we quite succeeded. When it opened on the 1st of July, it was To Be a Good Wife, Une Bonne Épouse. We had great figures, so we were very happy. But then came the obligation to wear a mask in the theaters, and that communication by the government was really like pulling off the audiences, and we saw that weekend, the second weekend of the reopening of the theaters, a decrease. It was like really une chute vertigineuse. It was horrible. All films had really like
Tinne,
minus 60, 70, 80%.
So about that, about the communication, I think it's an important topic that you're stressing on now, because for the first time, exhibitors and distributors alike had to face a anti-communication, saying don't go to the cinema. Basically, this is what the media were telling you every day, without telling it, but by telling you that there's a deadly virus out there and you cannot approach people, you cannot be sitting in the same room, you have to wear a mask, then of course it's what it means. I mean, people are afraid. And when you are running a cinema, and I'm addressing exhibitors here, you also have an audience, you have your community. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that was done in terms of communication? I mean, with the means that you had, I mean, you guys have newsletters, you have some tools, but facing this anti-communication coming from governmental institutions, the word of mouth around, can we maybe hear some people that actually did something to communicate, come back, watch films, it's safe now? And maybe ask the exhibitors, and then I will get back to you afterwards. Thank you. So, yes.
Okay, so I run a Arthouse cinema in Krakow, in Poland. It's called Kino pod Baranami, and it's altogether four rooms in 2 locations, because we program 4th room outside of our regular location. And yeah, Domenico, you were saying in the introduction, did we come up with a plan B during the lockdown? And actually we did. What we did in my cinema is that we, straight after we closed our cinema doors when the lockdown was introduced, we started thinking what we can do. And I started looking for an online platform that we could use for our cinema. And actually, in 4 weeks, we managed to build, or not build, but use a ready platform from New Zealand, and we managed to open an online cinema 4 weeks after we closed the doors. So this was a plan B that we really needed. And I can tell that our viewers, we communicated it immediately to our audiences.
How did you communicate, excuse me?
Well, newsletter, Facebook, basically. We didn't use media because we never have budget for, I don't know, radio or TV. So we only used our social media and newsletter or phone when we answered the phone when someone was calling. So we got a very positive feedback from our audiences who were really keen to see a film, even though it was an older film, on our platform, and even though it was a little bit, for example, more expensive on our platform than it's on other VOD platforms in Poland. But this is really what helped us survive the nearly 3-month lockdown. But now the cinemas in Poland are open since the beginning of June. But the Arthouse cinemas opened first. The multiplexes just joined us a couple of weeks ago. And yes, it's very difficult to go against this current message that the country is throwing, that basically it's not safe, really, in the cinema. We have 50% of the capacity we can use of the audience. We have to wear masks, so this is not something that people like. And it's very difficult, and we encounter questions. So what? You are open? You are working? We have really difficulty to get this message to our audiences that we are back in business. That's why a big marketing campaign starts right now, funded by the Polish Film Institute. That brings together Arthouse cinemas and multiplex cinemas. That it's called Come to the Cinema. But it's not easy, especially that the situation in Poland is more difficult right now, with many more cases than it was in March when we closed the cinema. So it's very, very difficult to reach some people who, when we announce a premiere in the cinema, when we announce new films coming to the cinema, we immediately get a question, will it be presented online as well? And we have to explain that no, first it has to go to the cinema. And that's why I think it's a very big challenge for Arthouse cinemas that, for the past years we have been working on building the audiences, developing audiences, working with audiences from 0 years old to 100 years old. We created this habit of cinema going, and now it's really in danger, and we have to really work a lot and struggle to try to keep it, to try to bring it back.
Thank you. And you smashed the windows as well. I mean, you had to. It was a necessity. It was an act of survival, but you had to do it. Vanja, do you want to add something?
Yeah,
yes,
so
of course.
by collapsing the windows, that means that immediately you have had conversations with distributors as well, and conversation was open enough to allow those films to all of a sudden go into pivot practically, right?
Yeah, some of the titles, yes. Yeah. And yes, it was like an emergency wheel for both for us, for the cinemas, and for the distributors who decided to go with such an idea. But of course, I hope that it can go back to the regular windows to keeping, because we all want to keep them, that's for sure.
Dr. Brouwer, I know that you like to talk about windows, you have a strong opinion about them. How would you react to such an initiative that was taken in Poland? Is it something that you had considered for your own cinema? Or is it something that you think is just an emergency solution? Or can we work towards some kind of hybrid form of showing Arthouse cinema in the different countries? You need a microphone, yes. I will give you mine, 1 second.
Yes, thank you. So I guess situation in all countries in Europe or around the world is different, and also the art house market. So if it's about my company, I would love to run a video on demand platform, but it must be worth earning as much money as I do with popcorn. So far, I don't have the solution. I guess it's more difficult because it's easy. We saw it's easy to close cinemas. It's easy to close markets. It's not just our market, it's all markets. It's really hard to restart. And what Marynia and all the others said, we are inside and everybody's telling you, oh, don't go in rooms, don't go with lots of people. So that's really a big challenge for us, and also because of this have still the social distance measurements. That means, for example, in Germany we can sell 1 out of 5 seats. So that's also what you said. Art house theaters opened first in general, or theaters in rural areas that are owned by families. They know we must open now, and I guess that's what our mission is. And we don't have this decision to say, oh, should we stay closed? Sometimes I think it would be the easiest. Just wait, close theaters again, and reopen it for December when United States market start again. But no, it's no option for us. For art house theaters, we talked a lot with a lot of colleagues also in Europe. I took part in a webinar in France with French colleagues. Also, they had some kind of this video on demand platforms, but what helped the most was social media, was all kind of social media, newsletter to keep contact. And I guess that's what's changing due to Corona. I guess maybe things don't change that much, but all developments we had before are accelerated. And this is all in a bad way. So if we talk about monopolization of market power, that's of course a big threat. It's not just the big Googles and Facebooks, it's also streaming platform we know, and Disney is buying Fox, and multiplex chains are buying multiplex chains. So that's of course a big threat to us. It's also if big companies like Universal decide either bringing movies day and date, or now if I deal with the biggest cinema company around the world. So there are big changes, but we had them before, or we noticed them before. And I guess for us it's now the question, what can we do as art house cinemas? The answer might be different in France, in Germany, or in Poland, and it's not this open question. So of course it's about the value of windows in future, and I'm pretty sure if we talk about windows, we also talk about money. So some question about this world is changing, and some question is just who should get the money. The big multiplex, also small cinema in rural areas that get copies later. If it's about the video on demand platforms or cinemas, of course it's a big deal we need to discuss. To us it's for the moment now, and that's the biggest challenge, is cinemas need to do the best. Maybe we had it before, producers, maybe distributors have the option, go directly to platform or postpone movies, or if they release it, maybe do less efforts because they tell us you can't sell a lot of tickets. And I do understand that as well, but it's no option for us as cinema. We need to be there right now. It's our cultural responsibility, but it's also the responsibility for the art, as you said, we love so much. And yes, we have to discuss what can we do even right now in sense of still going on and being better in all our social media work, in all kind of data. And I guess especially for art house cinemas, we are quite good, quite creative in curating events, curating programs. We are not that good so far, as you told, in working with the new media we need to do. I'm open to all changes if it's good, and if it's at the end of the day a fair model. And for the moment now, I guess still we will need cinemas in future for the European films. So there is no market, especially if it's Arthouse market, films that are going directly to platforms, at the end of the day, they rest invisible. And I guess right now, even on one hand, I feel this debate about windows, and on the other hand, I feel a lot of people are now telling how important cinema is. They maybe didn't the same as before, but cinemas are still this kind of hard chamber for art house movies, and I guess that's why we are all here. We love festivals and we love the movies we can see here, and I guess we need to collaborate even more, not just between cinemas, but also on a vertical level and also on an international level. And
but
to me, one last thing, it's about, if we talk about collaboration between cinemas and video on demand, maybe we need to go a next step, because we discuss it a long time, and it's good you do it, but it's not that much money. We know it's about subscription, so we need to find maybe a new solution, next step, learn from things what worked, also learn from things what won't work, even if we want it, and maybe that's what's necessary to be creative about this.
Thank you. And usually, and you mentioned it, when collaboration, do you hear me? Yes? Okay. Collaboration is, of course, important, and it's also important when you talk about innovation to talk about out of the box, like inputs coming from different professions. I mean, here in this room, we are all connected by cinema. Some people here are in the festival business, others are in the exhibition business, distribution, or whatever. But there are other sectors out there that were also impacted by COVID and reacted and are reacting in different ways. And I think one person here on stage could also represent that, because Vanja, you were through different industries. I mean, you were born in ex-Yugoslavia, where the market has changed so much in such a short time. And you worked for festivals, you were at Mubi, which is a platform. Now you're back at festival again as a director. Can you tell us a little bit, like, how is it to use one experience for one sector and apply it to another sector? Do you feel that you have something to bring to the table that is maybe a bit coming from outside and out of the box?
I think, yeah, thank you for this question. I think it's interesting to sort of the accumulation of experiences I have made professionally now help me, of course, to facilitate a quicker discussion, perhaps, with my fellow colleagues, now being a film festival, of course. And it's more stimulating, because in a way we are all now in this situation of having to think quick on our feet and having to think outside the box. We essentially do not have a frame of references any longer, of course. That in a way can be very exciting, and I think this is where festivals, this is an opportunity that festivals especially should embrace, of course, in the discussion with the fellow colleagues from the industry and the stakeholders and the audience. But I think it came in as a good moment of reflection to think, okay, what as festivals, what we do, you know, should be reconsidered, and if and when we go back to normal, it's not something to just go back to the usual pattern, to the blueprint that we are very familiar with. There are things that can be now used as a moment to experiment. Trial and error is also fine, and then see, you know, how further, once, you know, post-crisis, when we are moving forward, what a festival and their role should be as well. Of course, first and foremost, we are here for our audience and for our industry. And this is, of course, something that we have, that we are dealing with mainly right now, knowing that Rotterdam, for instance, is an audience-driven festival to a large degree. Just in the last edition, the 49th edition of Rotterdam had 340,000 visitors. And of course, it's a massive curveball that even when the festival physically will happen in as many cinemas possibly as we can go into, we will still not get even close to what our audience can and should be, of course. So this is the realities that we are facing as well, and then the aftermath of it. The first, that we are not really able to serve to the audience in the same fashion as we could and in the past years. And secondly, that the repercussion of that will be visible further down the line in the next year and so on and so forth. And that, of course, applies to the industry at large and such. So having conversations, especially about that, what next can happen in the transitional period, in a sort of new adaptation, in the adaptation to this current reality, and the consequences of it is also highly important, because of course with the packages that we received, and we are so lucky in Europe to be able to benefit from it as an emergency funds, were extremely beneficial and instrumental, of course, for survival. But further down the line, many more discussions and with the respective governments and European bodies will be, of course, needed to understand how, as a whole industry, and with that included as well festivals, will be able to move forward. Yeah.
Thank you. Domenico Dinoia, I was reading an interview that you gave not so long ago about the fact that Italian cinema are reopening and that the industry is kicking in again. And I was actually surprised to read that you mentioned films like Joker or Parasite as Arthouse film, but they are. And those are locomotives. Those are really like big films, even though they are made with the same, I guess, with the same passion and shown in the same cinemas, but they have the potential, because they have a lot of communication and marketing around them, to bring the reflex of watching film in cinema within the audience. Would you say that, aside from national comedies, because everywhere from Germany to Poland to Italy and France, national comedies are always working when they are popular, would you say that we are lacking those films today also because, and now I'm talking about American films, so they have the same problem. They are not sending the films at the same frequency. They're retaining a lot of films. And this is slowing down the reopening of the cinemas. Maybe, yeah.
Allora, intanto io credo che tutti noi che oggi siamo qui dobbiamo dire un grande grazie al Festival di Venezia, perché è una grande occasione che dà il segnale che si può.
Starting up again, and the presence of the 7 important directors of the biggest festivals, with Kate Blanchett the other evening, and Tilda Swinton, Anna Foglietta, who have constantly talked about the importance and the value of cinema and the value of seeing films in a cinema. I think that this is an extremely important moment. The whole of the cinema industry needs a key moment like this, like an important festival to start things up again. So if you'll allow me, I'm going to tell you what happened in Italy. We were the first country to be hit by this tsunami of infections. It really was a tsunami of infections. And this was at a time when Italian cinema was working swimmingly. So especially in the months of 2019, it worked very well. It really was a very positive record year in Italy after 2 very bad years. So finally there was a return to cinema. Some great successes also in Arthouse cinema, but the first couple of months of 2020 were also very good. And then we had this tsunami that completely floored us, and it took us a while to understand what we could do. So we were closed from the end of February up to the 15th of June. And the initiatives that we have implemented, especially as an Arthouse cinema, were to understand how to not interrupt the relationship we had with our audiences. So we sent out these newsletters on a constant basis, sent out messages all the time, and we were very pleased to remain close to the audiences. So we didn't want to kind of be beaten by this thing. And one thing that was really nice, and we have subscriptions in different formats for the whole year, and nobody asked for their money back for the films that they hadn't seen. So this is really showing solidarity from the audiences then. So we also set up and this was once again to keep this relationship going, and also with the distributors, we created different platforms as well, such as we use Sky, Netflix, Amazon. Platforms that were made by distributors and exhibitors so that we could show those films that couldn't come out anywhere else. And also this gave the audience the possibility to see this film and to make money for the cinema. And this was a way of keeping the relationship going between the cinema and the audiences. 15th of June now, there was a possibility from the Italian government to open cinemas again. But only 10% of cinemas have reopened, in fact, and that was a real problem. The main reason was that no distributor had released any new films, and as we've already said before, we continued nevertheless. Our cinemas opened along with other art house cinemas in big cities like Milan, and so we showed films that had already been released before. But at the same time, this 1.5 months, almost 2 months, the cinemas could use that experience, because when all the cinemas on the 26th of August opened with the release of Tenet, or let's say 80% of cinemas opened, and that's still the case today. Yeah, so. And those that are opened have had very good results. So we've given the possibility to the audiences to go back to these cinemas and see those films. Now, there's no doubt that the international release of Tenet on a world scale, on a European scale, has provided the possibility. And also, there's another film that's been released after too, and so then this is very popular with teenagers. These are people who are less fearful of the consequences of the pandemic. But what's missing is a major release of our art house films. So as we couldn't have the Cannes Film Festival, which is, of course, a very important festival for art house cinemas, it gives the possibility of having films for the new season. A very important opportunity. So let me think about last year, when there were many films shown at the Cannes Film Festival. But unfortunately, the fact that we didn't have this range of new films, this is kind of holding back things from taking off. But of course, the Italian government supported the Italian film industry, and we had more than 200 million euros for cinemas in order to compensate them for the losses for the months when we were shut down. So from that point of view, there was considerable concrete help, financial help, in order to sustain and support our activity. So what is missing then? Well, there's a lack of coordination with distribution, so we need to launch a major campaign. I think that should be our next objective, and I think we could even do that at the European level. Organize a major campaign, mobilize the audiences to get them back into the cinemas again, because these cinemas are now safe. They're not. There's no need to be afraid anymore. So this is why the festival in Venice is so important, because because we can see the audiences actually in the cinema rooms. So that's very important to show the general public. And another thing which is important, in my view, as well, and also these. So the last couple of months have been successes for Disney. So to bring out a major blockbuster like Mulan, even if it's only on a platform, and then others are working to have these windows. So we need to use these new arguments then in our favor. But I do think that there's a European cinema, international cinema, non-Hollywood cinema it has a great opportunity ahead of it. Of course, there are problems, and I doubt that the major Hollywoods would start making films for a budget of 200, 300 million. It's very difficult because there's a major risk, and so there's a major opportunity for our films, for national cinema, which is so successful. So we need to seize this opportunity, which comes at such an unfortunate time, but we could use it to really relaunch the cinema. We need to come together to relaunch European cinema, and also work with Europe and with national states on that.
What Domenico just said as well is stressed on the ecosystem. If we don't have the Cannes Film Festival, we don't have a Palme d'Or, then we don't have a Parasite this year. And then a lot of things are being a chain reaction just of that. And when I'm talking about ecosystem, everybody here is part of the same ecosystem. So when we move one piece one side, another side is suffering like a butterfly effect. So now it's time to open the floor to questions. If you have insight to share, if you have point of discussions that you want to bring to this discussion, or if you have a personal experience to share in a progressive way, the floor is yours. Just raise your hand and you will receive a microphone. What I'm just asking you is to introduce yourself with your name, the sector you represent or the company, and the country you are coming from. We don't hear you yet, but we will soon. Here you go.
Okay, so thank you, nice to meet you, and thank you for the talk. My name is Christosov, and I come from Bulgaria, from a very small market. And my question would be to Sabine Verheyen, because we receive a lot of information and news from our friends, for example, in Germany, about the amounts and the scale of support from the state to the filmmakers and to any, actually, people who work in any art industry. But the case in such a small country as Bulgaria it's totally different. So the question would be, were you able so far, and would you be able in the future to monitor how your policies and everything that you are working on is actually applied in, for example, in Bulgaria or in the Balkans or in countries where actually we have governments who are really having a hard time dealing with that?
You work as an exhibitor?
Yes.
Yes, running a
exhibitor,
cinema.
Distributor, and festival director.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
I think you will not be happy with the answer I give to you, because the different support schemes like we had in France or in Germany or in other countries were mainly national money. It is not European money that was distributed there. What we did as European Union was with the SURE program. That was a program where we try to help member states to finance unemployment during the crisis. That was given to the member states in a proportion to their size and economical power. But everything that was done until now in the support schemes was made on the national level. We had some activities on the European side, for example, with information platforms, with things that we could raise fast. But the big problem for us is that we have to wait for the new budget, and that is what will come with the 750 billion. And there we want to have a better control on the European side, because at the moment it is like this in the proposal of the member states, of the Council. The member states will get a share in proportion again of these 750 billion, and the member states themselves will decide where to spend the money. And what we as European Parliament want is that we can give them guidelines in where to spend it, because we don't want the member states to finance issues that have nothing to do with the COVID-19 crisis or have nothing to do with the reload of industries and sectors after the crisis. And we have to invest in future-proof projects and sustainable projects that are not just a short fire and then it's gone. So that is why we as European Parliament want to have let's say, a kind of say in which direction the money has to be invested. You can imagine that the member states are not happy about this questioning of the parliament to get this right to co-decide on this, because they say we know better than others where to spend the money because we know our country best. But I think it's important that Parliament tries to insist on this. That is also part of the negotiation process we have at the moment, and that was also one of the reasons why we said this minimum 1% earmarking for the cultural and creative sectors is necessary, so that also member states who might have much more or some problems also in other sectors and might see their priority in another sector than in the cultural and creative sector. We have several countries where this might be the case, because we saw in the past how the support schemes looked like and who got money and who did not get money, which sector was provided and which not. That is the reason why we as Cult Committee insist on this 1% earmark, so that at a minimum 1% of this money they get will go to the cultural and creative sectors, and so not all of that, but partly also to the cinema, to Arthouse, and to the media sector.
But also Europa Cinemas has received the money from the EU to compensate the cinemas, and it's in relation of how much time they closed during the pandemic. I don't see anyone from Europa Cinemas here.
But to say that is...
But maybe, Christian, you can talk about it. Wait for the microphone. Yes, thank you.
So it was possible that Europa Cinemas paid earlier than usual, and also 50% on top this year, and there will be another funding at beginning of next year, 2021, and it's, I guess, 110 euro per week a cinema was closed and per screen. So it's another funding, but so it's very helpful, and maybe it's good that member states and European Union works together, but it's not enough to really help cinemas in financing it all. So that's why we discussed it. I have to say, I talked with Lucia Ricalde, the head of media program, even before cinemas were closed. I guess only Italy was closed at this moment, at the beginning of March, and where we said, oh, this will be very hard times. It was a moment where we still thought maybe in other countries of Europe, cinemas will be kind of stay open. And it was clear it will affect our market. So it was very good that it was possible to react that fast together with a media program, but still also for the next year. And to me, it would be a good opportunity. So also look to CNC usually does a lot for cinemas. We try to increase usual supports. Why? Cinemas who get usually a support are identified. That's often in Europe Arthouse theaters, that's often cinemas in rural areas, traditional cinemas. And then it's easy because we face a problem. The last month it was about, we had fixed costs but no income. If we have still to work with Corona pandemic for maybe 12 more months, as it will take time till we have really a vaccination, till really risk groups are vaccinated, that means at one point we really need kind of to survive to restart, because if we don't earn enough money during winter, and maybe we are vaccinated, hopefully, or a lot of people next summer, but still how to finance next summer when it's hot like it is, and we still hadn't a Cannes festival, or maybe we have it in May, but till movies from Cannes start in cinema, it's autumn usually. So I guess it will face a long time, and that's why we need a real strategy, and if it comes to me, it's two. We need a short-term perspective, and of course short-term means support for cinemas on all levels to survive, and we need also to talk about a long-term perspective, and I guess that's why we are here, because if you ask me, the future is made now. Decisions we do now, and if we think about new also business models, they don't work next day. It will take time till they work, and I guess that's why we need also not just use this money. Of course, we need it to pay our rent, but next step is also use this money for innovation. That's to me a key point.
Thank you. Mathieu, you wanted to add something?
Oui, je voulais juste... Sorry.
So I just wanted to say that in terms of these payments and what's been done, CNC and all the aid which is for Arthouse Cinema, that aid has been paid in advance, and it's about 16 million euros for France. It concerns about half of the cinemas in France. Now, to go back to what the deputy said, in France, in terms of the member states, and in France itself, Jean Castex, the Prime Minister, has announced a relaunch plan for the cultural sector and a specific plan for cinema and audiovisual with 160 million euros. So this plan will be implemented. They'll have to consult with professionals. Art house cinemas will be part of that plan, at the very heart of it. But it's not just compensating for losses. It's also a plan for the future that wants to adapt the whole sector for the future. And this will be done in parallel. And this is some of the subject that was discussed in the previous panel, where I participated as well. This is part of the SMA directive that needs to be implemented by member states. So we want this to be as ambitious as possible when it comes to investment in platforms. So we really do have to adapt the whole sector for the future, so for the world of tomorrow, as it were. But anyway, so if we think about the future, basically we're looking at how to offset this shock from the pandemic, the difficulties experienced by festivals, so that we can adapt the whole of the European sector and preserve our sovereignty, cultural diversity, and also the health of the production industry.
Because we started with a very small market, a very small country, and now this is like a luxury reaction from a bigger country with already established market and everything. But Mrs. Verheyen, you wanted to add something.
I just wanted to add the money that was set free for this special situation was money out of the media program. So it is money that is taken from a program from another place, or something that was in the free reserve that might be there, but it's money that is not there for other things we normally have done with the program. And that's the reason why we ask for this additional money, because if you really want to help the sector in its holistic view, not just several very hard-tackled parts of the sector, the cultural and creative sector, you need this additional money to help them to come out of the crisis. It doesn't help just to shift money from one side to the other, because that is, in the end, just filling holes with another hole, with creating other holes. So it would be very important to have this, let's say, awareness with the member states that they accept that we need more money, also from the European side, especially for what you said. Not all the member states have the power to support their sectors in the way they need. And perhaps there is a possibility with this additional European money to support that. Because even many people think the European Union is not solidaric, but the European Union is solidaric. All the structural development fund, all the things that are done together are solidarity par excellence, because you have countries that pay more into this whole budget and others who are more receiving, and that is a chance when we really bring the cultural sector and also our cinemas and the media industry more in the focus, also perhaps also of structural funds. It's also a structural question. then we have additional money free for the sector to help them to invest in future-proof projects. And that is important for us. You said it right. It's not just to come back to what we had before. We must use the chance now to come back into a new sustainable future of the sector. Also to think about new ideas and projects, combinations that are necessary also for future generations, because young people have another way of consuming content, also Arthouse content, than it was perhaps in the past. And to find new ways of showing and new ways of screening or consuming such content, that might be a chance also during the lockdown or the phase we have at the moment to think about how to reset, but in a future-proof manner.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Yes, there's one here, and then it will be you. We have time for 2 or 3 more questions. Yes.
Just wanted to say it was a very friendly reminder to keep an eye on such countries because they need it. The government cannot do it themselves.
Hi. My name is Fanny Aubert-Mallory. I'm at the Institut Français and I'm in charge of coordinating 60 Arthouse cinema worldwide and somewhere in Europe. And Mr. Bral knows one of them very well, and Jeffrey knows another one in London. I'm very sensitive to this panel, and thanks for organizing it. I heard 2 things that were concomitant when Mathieu says we need European dynamic, and when Domenico says, why don't we have a global communication campaign? I was also very sensitive to the situation you described between the difference between Netherlands and Belgium. So and I don't know the figures in all your countries, but in France, the drop off in attendance was -70% in July, while usually July is a good month. So we're all facing those figures. My question is maybe for you, Mrs. Verheyen, I don't know. And I'm very sensitive to Christian saying, we need reaction now, we can't wait. We need people to go back in our Arthouse cinemas. Is there any way a communication campaign on an European level could support? And is that even a good idea? Do we need a campaign that is specific for Germany, for Holland, for Bulgaria? Maybe we don't talk to our viewers all the same way. So I'm not even sure of what is the solution, but where do we start if we want right now to tell to the audience, come back to the cinema, come back to the Arthouse place?
First, I think it is important to get trust of your visitors, of your audience again, so that they feel safe when they go to the cinema. You said already the communications that were made by the ministers for health and others are not always very helpful. On the other hand, people who could go back, I know, for example, in Germany we have, I think, nearly 60 different regulations on how to deal and what is the obligation in the cinema or not. I'm coming from a part of Germany where we have quite balanced measures, so I don't know if the figures in North Rhine-Westphalia are better than in other regions, but we try to balance out the needs of the cinemas and the needs of the audience, the visitors in a cinema, the viewers, for protection, and what is practical, useful, and what's perhaps too much or what to do. But in the end, it is important that we find a way of communication. First, when the measures are taken, you can go safe to a cinema. I think that's very important to say that. You can, like you go to the restaurants are also frequented meanwhile again. People went on holiday. It was still reduced, that's clear. All the sectors are still suffering because people are very keen to keep their health. But I think the main problem is first that you need the trust in the safety of your customers. The second is, during this time, and it was, for me, it was really was not wondering, but I was a little bit upset about that, how fast it can be that people change their usual way of consuming content. How fast it also was in the older generation who preferred perhaps to go to a cinema, or special youngsters suddenly said, okay, well, let's screen it at home. They bought big cinemas, big TVs. Take a look how some technical producers had a raise in their production. It was really astonishing how fast these changes went. We have a development since many years at the moment towards another kind of consuming, but due to the crisis it was very rapid now. And to react on that and to bring people back to, let's say, a hybrid consume of art house content, of high quality content, I think that's a big task. And I think we also as European Union have to do more. That was also one of the, not yet the crisis, but we are happy that with the new Lux Prize, we also try to bring a broader audience to such kind of movies, to European content. That are small steps, but it's something we do as Parliament out of our communication budgets. It's not European money in the sense that's distributed by the Commission. It's our Parliament's money where we try to support. But we also have to make new communications towards the value of our cinema environment throughout Europe, perhaps also through the media program. And I for sure will try to talk also to Thierry Breton on these things, and also in combination with Maria Gabriel. She was working on this in the last legislative period, but she's a strong supporter of activities in that field. So to come back to Brussels and to talk about ideas how we can support the comeback of the cinemas, and especially also the art house cinemas, is very important. We did many things with the Copyright Directive. We did many things with the Audiovisual Media Services Directive, where we tried to do a lot for European film with a 30% minimum range of European content, also on platforms, but that doesn't help the cinemas as such. But we kept the release windows. We tried to ensure that also the cinema sector has the possibility to exist, because that was also tackled, because there are many people talking about, do we need cinemas when we have big screens at home, and what's necessary there? You also have these people, and I absolutely don't share their visions or their ideas, because I think cinema for me is something special. And perhaps we also have to think about how to make cinema as such, again, more attractive. It must be an event when you go to the cinema. It must be something special. And there we have to think also about new ideas to create a new kind of cinema experience, not just sitting there in a dark room watching a movie on a big screen with a nice tone, but having more than that. And it's not just popcorn. It's, I think, a little bit more than that. And perhaps we have to think, especially in the art house scene, also to have additional offers.
Thank you. And Tinne, on that topic.
Yeah, I wanted to add that, as a matter of fact, communication is really very important. And there is one word that is lacking a bit, and I think we have to reintroduce the word joy. And joy is like throwing a party, and it's la fête, a festival. And so what Imagine is doing with the films that we had, so we are spreading them until next year Cannes, and we try for every single film to create event. And I think that either in the theaters, either together with the festival, but then with the festival insisting that we will be in the city of the festival, but we will also go in other cities, so we will decentralize and take, share the costs also as a distributor, because we think it's really necessary that audiences go back to the theaters and that they can be in dialogue with directors with talent. But also, for instance, we released this summer Crash by David Cronenberg. Of course, he couldn't come from Toronto, but we hired professional people to have a perfect capture. He was in Toronto. There was someone on stage in a theater in Brussels. We had a 1-hour conversation with him. It was marvelous, and we streamed it in other art houses at the same time, and then afterwards, after the hour of the interview with Cronenberg, they had the film Crash. It was not online. That was his special wish and our wish as well. It was to promote the film and to make that the people went to the theater and not that they could see the interview with Cronenberg on a platform. No, they had to be all over Belgium in a theater and see him on the screen, and afterwards they had the film Crash. So our little staff, we are a very small team. We work for every single film now to create event, and in collaboration with the theaters, with festivals and theaters, and we hope to survive until Cannes next year with every single title in the catalogue.
Thank you. And if I can add to that, yes, thank you. Because I was there for the Crash projection, you also had, it was not just anyone interviewing David Cronenberg, he was also a film director interviewing David Cronenberg, so he had his own fan base, he was communicating online, this is how I heard about it. It's through his fan base that I knew that he was interviewing David Cronenberg, then I said, oh, well, I have to be there, and then I was there. So this is part of the whole event thing, and it's quite special. Yes?
But just a short note, because you said quite, of course, I agree with you totally that going to the cinema has to be an event, it has to be an extra added value, but this is what art house cinemas have been doing for the past years and decades. So the question now is how we can, what can be done to help the art house cinemas right now, when the art house cinemas can, for example, in Poland, I don't know, invite 50 or 25% viewers. They invest the same amount of time and money to organize those events. We have, I don't know, 500 events in 365 days of the year. We invest the same amount of time and money but less income. So the help is needed at least for this transitional time. Thank you.
Yes, Mathieu, you had something to add.
Oui, juste par rapport à ce que...
Yes, just to answer to what you...
One of the main challenges for us over the next couple of months and years is to get new audiences. We've seen this in France, where there are a lot of cinema goers. Of course, we have annual results which are very good, 212 million entries. And as Fanny said, entries this year were down 75%. But this wasn't too bad compared to some of our European neighbours. But since the end of the month of August, the drop is 25% on the figures of the previous years. So people are going back to the cinema again, and so that's a very good thing. But I think that the challenge concerning art house cinema is that, so these are very creative cinemas then, and they've shown that they are extremely creative in terms of the way that they work, and especially with the audiences. So the real question is how we can get young people back into the cinemas. If we look at the age brackets in France, the people over 50 do continue to go to the cinema even more than those who were 50 about 20 years ago, but the under 50s go to the cinema less, and especially for young people, they tend to go 3 or 4 films a year. They tend to be American films rather than European films, so there is a real problem there, and especially in terms of crisis periods, this is where we can be the most creative, and in Europe we're lucky enough, especially across all European countries, to have public institutions which are dynamic and which are ready to support the sector. The CNC in France, for example, the FFA in Germany, the MIBAC in Italy, and the Wallonian Federation in Brussels. So I think that in terms of public support, and also we have the European Parliament, which is very willing to invest in cultural issues. So but we're going to have to fight for it.
It kind of crave for a meeting with all those institutions together and share ideas and brainstorm and maybe invite people that are coming from different industry and do what they do in the startup industry, you know, because in a certain way what we are doing here out of a very conservative industry that is exhibition, that has been existing more or less the same way for a long time now, we need fresh ideas. We need fresh ideas because the young people, as you just said, they don't realize that it's fresh. For them, everything is new, you know? So being attracted to something that is a bit conservative or a bit old, I would say, and I measure my words, it's not always as attractive as something that they are witnesses, the birth of something. I'm talking about VR or stuff like that. Of course, it creates curiosity and it creates an appeal to this young audience. So if I can talk at the European level, at the distribution level, international distribution level, and even at the exhibition level, festivals, president of associations, politicians, all together, I mean, it's a bit utopical, but this is a time for utopia, right? I mean, if we have to build an utopia, it starts today, and it starts like this by putting people in the same room, by having them discuss and follow-ups, because it's nice to meet in a festival, and you know, I know about that, and it's been like that for years. You meet your partners at a festival and say, see you at the next festival, you know? The follow-up, what's happening between those events? You mentioned your event having an interview of a famous director online, but there was a conversation online after that. People tweeted about it. People started to say, okay, he said that, and I want to continue the conversation. So festivals are important for sure because they are meeting points. But today we have the means, and the pandemic taught us that, you know, Zoom and those kind of tools, everybody here knows how to use them now. It taught us that. I mean, before, I had to use that on a regular basis, but a lot of people didn't have to do video calls. Today, everybody has to do them. So let's use that to continue the conversation. Yes, Christine. After Christian, I will take one last question, and then we'll wrap this up, because it's already late, and we don't want to do like the previous panel. We want to finish on time.
Yes, thank you. So very interesting what you said, Domenico, because you're right. More people have now streaming platforms, also what Sabine said, kind of a change of behavior. But I guess we also noticed now also what we can do online. And it was good for us that we can order things with Amazon, stream movies somewhere else, or have Zoom conferences, but it showed us also what's not possible on online, and I guess that's a big chance. I really believe in community-based, mission-driven art house cinema, and that's what you said and what I meant before. Right now we need to do the same work as before, even we can't sell all the tickets as usual, even if we know that people won't come to theaters right now as they're feeling as a risk person. So we have a lot of people in your Kino group, my company. We have also a subscription like Netflix since over 10 years. And we gained subscribers during crisis. Some said, oh, I can't afford it anymore. But even more said, yes, we come. And we have even people right now, they're telling us, yes, we still will pay also the next month, even we won't come back. We feel not secure. So of course it's about, we need kind of better levels for security measurements. It's necessary, but it won't solve everything. It's about a campaign, but to me it's also the trust in a specific cinema. So it's not just, do I believe in cinemas at all, but do I trust my very special cinema? And that's our work for the next months. And I guess it's necessary to create these events, to do as normal as possible, even if you know it's not. And I guess that's what people need. That's what I really trust. Why should, and we have it all over Europe, art house cinemas tell me, we sold so much vouchers, we got donations. Why should people do it if they think the time of cinema is over? And I guess that's we all miss this kind of events together, whatever if it's a family coming together, a wedding, whatever, but it's also kind of this culture. And in Germany, and I guess that's what's very important. In Germany, we often say culture is food, Kultur ist Lebensmittel. I don't know if it makes sense in English. So, but we need it like food. Maybe that makes more sense for the Germans. And if we think this, then we need to put it in our way. It's all over Europe, it's possible to go back to gym, but still we are kind of very careful with all kind of cultural spaces. It's not just cinemas, it's also theaters, it's also music clubs. And we know if these cultural spaces are lost, if they can't survive, often they won't reopen in general. And I guess that's also the mission we have, to keep these cultural spaces alive, because that's the base for artists, if they are musicians, if they are theater players, if it's cinemas. And I guess that's why we have to do it right now. And of course, we all learned much more in communicating via social media, digital communication. It's good, it's necessary. But at the end of the day, we are sport, we are there in our communities, in our neighborhoods. And that's still, I guess, even in a digital world, that's our mission and that's our tell it core competition.
Well, I don't know about you, but I feel it's a great conclusion because there's hope in it. And if I have to remember something today, it's this. I mean, 6 months more for some of confinement at home with just your family or your wife you are getting divorced with. I don't know, but let's meet. This is what we all need. I mean, after this time confined, we have to meet, and cinema is a great place for that. So thank you, everyone, for attending this. Thank you to the panelists. You were great. Great conversation. Thank you to the CICAE. Thank you. Thank you to the CICAE for inviting me. And thank you, of course, to La Mostra del Cinema. It's amazing to be here.
And thank you, Domenico, for doing such wonderful moderation.
Thank you.